Welcome to the Drop the Mic Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Michael Davis. It's been one extraordinary dream you don't want to awake from, but you wake up in your reality and it's a nightmare. Why wrestling fans are living in this moment right now, plus speculation surrounding FTR's next steps, and Cody Rhodes already confirmed for the Royal Rumble return. This and so much more today on the Drop the Mic Wrestling Podcast. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, welcome to the Drop the Mic Wrestling Podcast. You may be listening live on YouTube or Facebook, where I would like to remind you that if you were one of those lucky people, is you get to be a part of this show. We've had several people over the last few weeks send out a comment on Facebook, send out a comment on YouTube, and guess what? Where you're seeing my name right here, that is where your question would be on. Your question could pop up on YouTube, could pop up on Facebook Live, and you're a part of the show. Whether something I say resonates with you, whether something I say sparks a disagreement, or maybe a question that I haven't touched on or covered in this podcast or other episodes of the Drop the Mic Wrestling Podcast, it is all up to you to be a part of the show. So I'd like to encourage you. I encourage everybody, drop a comment in. Okay. I try to get to them all, but this is going to be an interesting episode to say the least. And I have to smile because of what we're about to talk about. So I pondered how we would approach this episode. And I was like, you know what? Let's talk about depression. Okay. Now don't hop off. Okay. But I wanted to give a few symptoms that the Mayo Clinic from their website gave about depression. Okay. Depression's a serious thing. But I hope to illustrate my point with this. So Mayo Clinic offers some of the symptoms for depression of, I'll name a few: feelings of sadness, tearfulness, emptiness, or hopelessness, angry outbursts, irritability or frustration, even over small matters, tiredness and lack of energy, so even small tasks take extra effort, reduced appetite and weight loss, or increased cravings for food and weight gain, anxiety, agitation, restlessness, slow thinking, speaking, or body movements, feelings of worthlessness or guilt, fixating on past failures or self-blame, trouble thinking, concentrating, making decisions, and remembering things, and loss of interest or pleasure in most or all normal activities, such as hobbies. And I share these symptoms for depression at the start of this episode, to put you in a weird mood. But if you look at some of those symptoms, they really tell a story about where the wrestling industry and wrestling fans have been. Okay. We're going to talk a little later about how everyone is affected by this, between other companies, other talents employed by WWE. But I wanted to take a moment and say that there was one man responsible for this feeling across the WWE fan base, and his name is Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Someone who is highly regarded for taking WWE and taking the sport of professional wrestling from something small, territorial, and making it a multi-billion, multi-conglomerate, international, universal, worldwide phenomenon. He has really had a vision for the business, and wherever he wanted to take the business, for better or for worse, he has taken the business. no matter who he has stepped on, no matter who he has upset. He genuinely doesn't care. And I'm sure some of the people listening to this podcast hope to get to a point in their life where they're like, I'm going to do what I want, and I don't care what other people think. And that's fine, because there is a point in your life where you're like, okay, and this usually happens, let's be honest, when you're established, you got a wife, you got kids, you even got grandkids, and you're like, I got everything I want. I'm probably retired right now or very close to it. I'm just going to, and this is why a lot of older people have unfiltered comments, is they're like, yeah, what can you do with me? I mean, if you fire me, I'm just, just going to enjoy life, just going to go to the beach more often. Like, there's a special part of older people and having no filter. And that's fine if you get there. But when it comes to hurting other people, that is where this line gets blurry. And Vince McMahon, in his time as a professional wrestling or a sports entertainment promoter, has had no care for decades. Not in his old age, not at 75, 80 some years old. He has had no care for anyone except for himself and except for his wallet for as long as he could remember, and for his ego. And unfortunately, we're living in a time where Vince McMahon's really killed a passion. Now, let me take you back 6-7 months ago. Okay, all the sexual assault allegations, sexual harassment allegations from Vince McMahon as he was leading as chairman and CEO of the World Wrestling Entertainment business. He was accused, and let's be honest, if you watch WWE programming, you probably understand, yeah, a lot of this probably happened. We can't confirm or deny. We weren't in the room. We can't say, but depending on the stuff we got in the Attitude Era, the Ruthless Aggression Era, rumors, just the kind of person that Vince McMahon comes across as, yeah, our imagination probably doesn't have to go too far to say might have happened. But I'm not going to use this podcast to say as such. But Vince McMahon, oh my gosh, the one guy you never thought would leave the company, retires all of a sudden after these allegations come out, and Triple H takes over creative control. Stephanie and Nick Khan are co-CEOs, which I was honestly concerned about. I was concerned about Nick Khan, but I knew the company would be in a better direction if they allowed Triple H, particularly, take over creative control. Stephanie McMahon's always been a great ambassador for the WWE. So I'm like, okay. And SummerSlam was already getting in the cards. So it was like, okay, Triple H is going to have some creative control over SummerSlam, in which he brought out a blockbuster with bringing Bayley back from injury, bringing in Dakota Kai and Io Sky. He brought back Karrion Kross and Scarlett on SmackDown on a Friday night. That was his first re-signing appearance. And after SummerSlam, it was like, okay, there's some questionable stuff. Wasn't necessarily happy with the Lesnar-Reigns match. Obviously, I was in Nashville that weekend for Ric Flair's last match, but didn't go SummerSlam. It was weird. But then Triple H's real first pay-per-view was Clash at the Castle. Highly regarded as perhaps the greatest pay-per-view event in WWE last year. But probably more importantly, the best wrestling event in the entire calendar year of 2022. And over the next few months, watching the business unfold, you see returns, you see coherent storylines. After a time of struggling to get through a 3-hour Raw, a 2-hour SmackDown, a 2-hour revision NXT, all of a sudden it gets easier. It gets enjoyable. Everyone loves WWE. Fans who haven't watched in years are hearing about the change and are like, yeah, I wanna start watching again. Where do I start? And they're like, oh, this is actually good. So over the next few months, you feel like WWE is being reclaimed as something from our childhoods that we loved and cherished and were fond over. So with the changes, Triple H leading creative control, there's a long-term storytelling. There's new hires. Everything's going great. And then you see this Vince McMahon documentary come out. And Vince says he wants to come back to WWE. And it's like, yeah, you probably won't. Nobody in the company wants you back. And what happens is you wake up. You wake up from this dream that you have been in 5, 6, 7 months. And this is your dream. This is like you're in a deep sleep. It's your dream job. It's your dream family. It's your dream dog. You're doing great because nothing's going wrong. Everything makes sense all of a sudden. And you're just floating on a cloud. You're floating on a cloud. And then all of a sudden, you wake up. Somebody startles you and wakes you up. And you look around you and you're like, where am I? This looks exactly like what I saw before I woke up or before I fell asleep. And guess who is waking you up? Vincent Kennedy McMahon, the biggest, greatest, and worst heel at the same time of all time in not only the professional wrestling and sports entertainment business, but in terms of just a human being in general. Because Vince McMahon has no care or concern. It's the worst time, too. It's the worst time because WrestleMania season, guys. We are on the brink of what should have been, could still be, but very unlikely it is, the greatest WrestleMania of our lifetimes. The greatest Royal Rumble of our lifetimes. This was going to be awesome. I was texting a friend of mine, Chase Sparks, always a great listener to the show, always chiming in. Perfect man. Parks and Rec, guys. Come on, strung the ties. But Chase texted me, and I was like, dude, this is horrible because this was going to be the greatest WrestleMania of our lifetimes. He's like, that's saying something because you have this period between WrestleMania 17 through 21. Some people extend it to 23 of just incredible WrestleManias. Every WrestleMania hit in that time frame. WrestleMania 21 being my favorite, always has a soft place in my heart, being the first WrestleMania that I got to watch live as it happened on my television. Thanks, Dad. And this WrestleMania was going to rival all of those manias that we've seen in our lifetime. And now it just doesn't, because here's one big thing where Vince McMahon's killed the passion of watching on a weekly basis. I struggled this week as a big wrestling fan. Everybody knows how big of a wrestling fan I am. If you don't, and you're just seeing me for the first time, okay, I'm going to tell you about me. I got 4 AEW action figures hanging on the wall behind me. If you're watching on YouTube and Facebook, you can drop a comment in the section if you want to be a part of the show. Behind me, I got a plaque for Christmas showing the Fiend Bray Wyatt defeat John Cena in the COVID Mania in the first ever and only, as of now, Firefly Funhouse match. You see behind me where I have a signed poster from an independent wrestling show of the North Carolina with FTR, Brad Attitude, Brian Cage, Arn Anderson, his son Brock. Like that on my birthday weekend. That's how you spend my birthday, is watching wrestling with me. That's a passionate fan right there. And I struggled to watch wrestling this week because what does it matter? And when Vince was in charge of Monday Night Raw, in charge of Friday Night SmackDown, you could watch 3 hours of Raw one week, and the very next week, it's like you're living in a different universe. It's like Vince McMahon didn't care to have coherent storytelling to build on his shows. That's what's made WWE so good this last 6-7 months, because when you sit down and you watch a show and you invest your time as a wrestling fan, there is a lot of hours of wrestling and not a lot of hours of your week. Okay. You got 3 hours on Mondays with Raw. You got 2 hours on Tuesdays with NXT. You got 2 hours of SmackDown with on Fridays. And that doesn't even include other companies. You got 2 hours of Impact on Thursdays. You got 2 hours of Dynamite for AEW on Wednesdays. You got an hour of Rampage on Fridays. Not to mention it, if you try to look up Major League Wrestling, the NWA, Ring of Honor, if there's not a pay-per-view on that weekend where you're trying to invest your time as a fan watching everything, it baffles me. Like Matt Cosgrove, good thing there are alternatives outside of WWE. Yes, there are alternatives outside of WWE. Those guys have helped themselves and didn't even have to do anything because of the news that Vince McMahon is back. And if you missed Matt Cosgrove on the Out Pocket with Michael Davis last Friday on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, WWBG 1470 AM, it's part of the TGI Friday lineup. Me, myself, Matt Cosgrove, Jason Seatek, and Ryan Frick of Tap Outs and Touchdowns had an amazing segment. That was fun, but it was over a circumstance where it's like, it's not so much fun, because how with Vince McMahon and WWE, it's you just start losing hope. Okay. When we were talking about the depression symptoms at the beginning of the show, what a great way to start a show, right? A lot of people want to stay tuned in about depression, but it's loss of interest. It's like feeling of worthlessness or guilt. You feel like your time is wasted watching WWE now, because if this buildup is so good to the Royal Rumble in WWE, all Vince McMahon has to do is 3 weeks, 2 weeks before WrestleMania, he says, I'm taking over creative control and I'm making WrestleMania in my image, because it's his company. That's all he can do. That's all he wants to do, is ruin everything. And that is why he is perpetuating the depression of wrestling fans. Without a better, less serious term, that, because depression's a real thing. Like, a lot of people struggle with it. Like, I'm not making light of that situation, but it's depressing to be a wrestling fan, at least in WWE. And Matt Cosgrove plainly put out there are alternatives outside WWE. AEW is one of those. And I'm just saying, this is the worst time of the year for Vince McMahon to come back, because I was really, really excited about what this WrestleMania season had to offer. And I don't know what saves it, because he can do whatever he wants. And it's going to affect more than just WWE. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk about how this has really impacted the wrestling world. We've talked a little bit about the fans. We're going to talk about other companies, other alternatives that Matt Cosgrove just mentioned in our comment section. And we're going to mention some talents that may have had their eye on the WWE. We're going to talk about all of that when we come back next on the Drop the Mic Wrestling Podcast. Stay tuned. It's only going to be a few seconds. Welcome back to the Drop the Mic Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Michael Davis, and just wanted to remind you that you can follow the Drop the Mic Wrestling Podcast. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Facebook. Obviously, if you're watching live on Facebook and YouTube, you can drop a comment in the section. We're also on Instagram at Drop the Mic Wrestling that you can follow for content. We're reimagining our social media right now, and I'm really excited for the future that's going to be launching here in the next couple weeks. And just like Matt Cosgrove did on the last segment, you can be a part of the show. You can send your questions. You can send your comments in on Facebook or YouTube, and it pops up right here, just like this new comment from Matt Cosgrove himself. He is pumped for. Oh my gosh, Matt. Why? You know I'm struggling right now. And ah, Matt Cosgrove is pumped for Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns for the belt. Or belts, maybe. We added that twist last year, part 72. And I was texting Matt, and he's like, you know how I'll know when WWE is now firmly in control of Vince McMahon again? When Goldberg comes back, and we're just going back. It's like Goldberg competing for the title, just all the stuff we didn't want the last 5-10 years is going to be reoccurring, and nothing could take him down. Like, if these allegations and him retiring himself didn't take him down, like, this is bad. Like, this has to be horrible. Well, but at least, I mean, if we're trying to be positive in this, if we're trying to put a positive spin or light on this, at least Roman Reigns is going to get to his 1,000-day mark. It's pretty much confirmed now that Roman Reigns will hold the title, at least the Universal Championship, for 1,000 days, which it works. Oh my God. There is breaking news from the wrestling world, and this is awful. If you know, we're live on Facebook and YouTube right now, and there's literally a report that's been released like 10 minutes ago, that Jamin Poo, who is known as Jay Briscoe of the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions, has passed away at the age of 38. And it's been confirmed by AEW President Tony Khan, and Khan released a statement and said, sadly, Jamin Poo, Jay Briscoe of the Briscoe brothers, famous Ring of Honor tag team, current Ring of Honor tag team champions, has passed away. He was a star in Ring of Honor for over 20 years, from the first show until today. Jay and his brother Mark dominated Ring of Honor, reigning as champions to this day. We'll do whatever we can to support his family. Rest in peace, Jay Briscoe. Wow. That sucks. And of course, we're live on Facebook and YouTube right now. And I was able to meet the Briscoes this past summer when I went to Nashville for StarCast and Ric Flair's last match. And they are incredible. They are an incredible tag team, Jay and Mark. And this sucks. This sucks. And the Briscoes, the Briscoes were awesome. Like, thinking that we're not going to have another Briscoe brothers match. There are so many dream matches, and this tag team didn't even get the exposure that they deserved because of, maybe some political beliefs. Maybe, Warner Bros. Didn't want them on AEW television, WWE not taking a chance on them, and this is horrible. But they poured everything they could on the ring. They They poured everything they could into the wrestling ring. Again, they were, I don't even know, they won 13 times the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles. They won the 6-man tag titles with Bully Ray. Jay Briscoe was a 2-time Ring of Honor World Champion himself. Like, these guys, thankfully, they got inducted into the Ring of Honor Hall of Fame this year, the class of 2022, and it was just something that automatically came up this year, and I'm glad they were able to put the Briscoes in as breaking news from this podcast. If you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, that Jay Briscoe has passed away, and unfortunately, this has been confirmed just a few minutes ago. Passing away at the age of 38 from a car accident. And this, like, what are you going to do, right? I mean, wow. Yeah. And it's weird because it's like, I just think back to Jim Ross, the night that Owen Hart died, and tried to come up with words in this moment right now. Tried to come up with moments right now. And Isaiah commenting in, he's like, oh, wow. And that pretty much sums up what just happened. And man, if I may, and I know this is a wrestling podcast, I know that this is professional wrestling. You got to talk about wrestling. You got to keep going. You got to keep moving on with the broadcasts. Like, this just happened, and Jay Briscoe has a family, his brother Mark, and they didn't expect that this was the last day of Jay Briscoe's life, and nobody did. Nobody expected this was the last day that Jay Briscoe would take his last breath. So whatever you need to do to prepare yourself for that day that you never see happening, like, get right with the Lord, get right with people that, you know, you're in arguments or disagreements with, or that thing you're kind of scared to do or be hesitant to take. Just remember that we're not promised not another minute, not another day on this earth, and all of our time with each other should be taken very seriously. And, you know, you may be watching back on this tomorrow on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, and you may have already heard the news that Jay Briscoe, one half of the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions, record time, 13-time World Tag Team Champion, with his brother Mark as the Briscoe brothers, putting on classic matches. Some that come to mind was with FTR this past year. In their matches, the double dog collar match, their match earlier in the year where FTR won the titles from them. That Jay Briscoe has passed away at age 38, and again, whatever you need to do to make the most of this time on earth, and again, get right with the Lord, not just for like hell insurance, but really having a relationship and allowing yourself to, you know, be a better person, allowing yourself to care and love for those around you. Because I could have easily gotten a text. I said, you know, Desmond Johnson, producer of Tobacco Road Sports Radio, saying check your phone there on Facebook, and unfortunately showing that was confirmed. that Jay Briscoe of the Briscoe brothers has passed away at age 38, and literally just confirmed while we were on air, live Tuesday night on Facebook and YouTube. And Matt Cosgrove, Jay was world champion too. Yeah, just mentioned couple minutes ago that he was a 2-time Ring of Honor world champion. I loved his reign as Ring of Honor world champion, because even with being associated as a tag team wrestlers struggle so hard, because once you're put into a tag team, everybody thinks of you as just a tag team. But if you remember from his time as Ring of Honor world champion, at least his reign that lasted a little while longer. I'm trying to think how long he held the title for the first time. First time it was only 89 days, but he had actually suffered an injury and was vacated. But the second time, that's the one I was thinking about, when Jay Briscoe was Ring of Honor world champion back in 2014. He won the title in Toronto, and he held the title for 286 days. And that was an interesting time period, because with Ring of Honor, you had the Young Bucks, you had Adam Cole, you had Jay Lethal, you had Michael Elgin. Believe that was the time where Kevin Owens had just left, or otherwise known as Kevin Steen. And that was a pivotal moment for Ring of Honor, and for him to hold the title nearly a year before dropping Jay Lethal for his historic 427-day title reign, which recently just got beat by Roosh a couple years ago. Jay Briscoe's reign mattered, and I'm very happy that he was able to break away from the stereotype of being a tag team wrestler, and instead he was able to do that single run and be a world champion, be recognized for the work he had done for the company. And Matt Cosgrove also mentioning his style is a lost art. He'll be missed greatly. And yeah, he will be. If you're just joining us on Facebook or YouTube, or tune in tomorrow on Tobacco Road Sports Radio as part of the Wrestling Wednesday lineup, Jay Briscoe just confirmed passed away at age 38 from a car accident. And that's the worst breaking news that I could bring up. And so we're going to take a very, very short commercial break. When we come back, we'll figure out what to talk about. So that Drop the Mic Wrestling Podcast, we're going to take about a 20-second break and be right back. Welcome back to the Drop the Mic Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Davis, and I had a plan for the show, and kind of didn't in a way either. I was texting my buddy Matt Cosgrove, which you can see his comment on our Facebook and YouTube stream right now, because Jay Briscoe, one half of the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions, has passed away at age 38. Jay, famous for being part of the Briscoe brothers, being a 13-time Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champion, being a 2-time Ring of Honor World Champion, and very close with his brother. And it's just awful. Like, it's a really unfortunate circumstance and moment here in the wrestling world. And if you listen to my rant at the top of the hour of Vince McMahon is killing WWE, Vince McMahon's like, oh my gosh, like the worst. And then you hear news about this and you're like, wow, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. And it's still a really hard thing, loss of words to put together that Jay Briscoe has passed away, and I I don't know where to go from here because that that wrecks you. Was able to meet him, was able to watch him. He was the WrestleCade main event wrestling convention here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. If you're listening to Back Road Sports Radio, you're very familiar with that Triad Winston area. He was the main event. Jay, along with his brother Mark, teaming with the original Kingdom, Michael Bent, Matt Taven, Maria Kanellis at ringside. They were so great that day. But that was the thing. And Jay Briscoe's legacy is going to be never made it to the big time, right? He never made it to WWE. He never made it to AEW, but that's okay because instead what he did was he provided moments and he created memories for people on the independent scene. He built a brand. Like the Briscoe brothers and Ring of Honor will always be synonymous with each other. You have those names, right? You have those names with companies where okay, they build it, right? Like they're synonymous with that brand. Hulk Hogan, WWE, The Rock, Stone Cold, WWE. AEW's been the Bucks, Kenny Omega, Jericho, Impact being Styles, Joe, Bobby Roode, Jeff Jarrett, Japan, Nakamura, Okada, Fujinami, like those guys, Inoki. Ring of Honor will be, I want to say CM Punk. I want to say Bullet Club. Bullet Club was a huge part. But the Briscoes. You just can't tell the story of Ring of Honor, and you can't tell the story of tag team wrestling, and you can't tell the story of the independent wrestling scene without talking about the Briscoes, without talking about Jay Briscoe, who has unfortunately in the last hour news has broke that Jay Briscoe has passed away. And I always joke with Matt Cosgrove about, man, every time I get off the podcast, there's news that breaks and I don't get to hear it and don't get to talk about it on my show. And this is one of those instances that you don't want to talk about. Desmond Johnson saying check your phone on Facebook and, getting texts. My phone blew up. Usually I put it actually on do not disturb. So, nobody rings and calls, but I have it right here. And instead, look down and Jay Briscoe has passed away at age 38. And thinking about tag team wrestling, FTR, Dax Harwood on his podcast this past week, talking about sort of his future, laying that out, saying that his and Cash Wheeler, their contracts end at the end of April. And I know the Vince McMahon stuff has, probably thrown a loop in those plans of just, okay, what do we do? Where do we go from here? And FTR can really do whatever they want because they are building a legacy. They are building something in AEW. They're building something across the globe, and they're doing these independent shows. And if there's anything that is worth something in the last few minutes, like we got to see FTR and the Briscoes, like two of the better independent tag teams in the world. We got to see FTR versus the Briscoes, not once, but twice. Like that's really cool. Like we got to see that dream match and FTR being allowed to be in AEW, but also being able to take other bookings, A, has worn them thin, but B, they were able to give us really great dream matches, namely with Young Bucks with Aussie Open, with Mercy Machine Guns, maybe, with the Briscoes, and I, I, I just hate that we're not going to have another Briscoe brothers match like that, and that's the least of the concerns, right? That's the least of the concerns because a guy just lost his life at 38, and again, do whatever you need to do to get right with people you love. Take advantage of those opportunities with the people you love. Spend time with them. Give them a call, and you never know. You just never know. And all you can do with that is not to scare you, but and this is a wrestling podcast, but whatever. Like all you can do is live each day, live each moment as if it's your last. That's so cliche nowadays. But it's true because at the end of the day, people die, right? Like, and never know when their last day is. Some are dying from cancer, some are dying, some are killed tragically, like this. And unfortunately, this is a reality of the world we live in. And if you can pass away, if you can leave this earth and people are still talking about how you made them feel, and as horrible as I started this episode talking about like depression symptoms and all this stuff, like professional wrestling makes you feel. I have met Jay Briscoe. I've met his brother Mark too, at Starcast, and never realized like how much they made me feel, right? And you never know. Like these guys can be complete strangers your entire life, and some may get the opportunity to meet them, others may not, and they go out and they perform and they put their bodies on the line for you, just for you to be entertained for 5 minutes. And a lot of times wrestling fans are not grateful for that. And I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of, oh man, this match is boring. But these guys are literally risking their lives, their livelihoods, their health, sacrificing time with their family and their close friends to perform and make sure you just leave with a smile or leave with a feeling of, okay, life's going to be okay. Life's going to be good. And Jay Briscoe spent his professional life, his job, his career that blended into his personal life. Like he spent that doing that for others. Yeah, you make money from the business, obviously, but at the end of the day, you kind of do this for others. I mean, you do this for people having enjoyment, people feeling some sort of way, either positive or negative, whenever you're in the ring. And I mean, the Briscoes got a lot of heat for any political stuff. Like, I'm not going to get into that because that's very decisive. That's very divisive. At the end of the day, Jay Briscoe is a human and won't be coming home to his family. And that sucks. That really, really sucks. And this was awful. So yeah. Unless you missed the news, Jay Briscoe, one half of the Briscoe brothers passed away, age 38. Car accident, just broke. And my apologies to producer Desmond Johnson. Did not want to talk about this. Did not foresee this happening. Did not know this happened until he told me to check my phone. I tried, and apologies to listeners, like I tried to find words, like all of it came from my heart based on the events that have happened in the last 20 minutes. And it sucks. And before we go off air, before you move on about your day, before you continue with the Wrestling Wednesday lineup, where you're listening live on Facebook, YouTube on Tuesday night, whether you're listening on Tobacco Road Sports Radio on Wednesday afternoon. I got to leave you with just hug your loved ones and call the people you need to call and live your life to the fullest. Not necessarily going out and chasing all these extravagant things, but making sure the people in your life know you love them. So that's been the Drop the Mic Wrestling podcast this week. We'll come back next week and probably talk some Royal Rumble because we need to get to that. And Cody Rhodes is confirmed for the Royal Rumble, as we mentioned at the beginning of this episode. And we got a whole other week to talk about the Royal Rumble, but be praying for the Briscoe family, be keeping them in your thoughts, sending them your love. And guys, I will see y'all next week on the Drop the Mic Wrestling Podcast. Everyone have a great week, and I'll see you soon.